purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny.
Hello and welcome to Freethought Forum. I'm Fahringer, the producer of this show and your acting host for this program. In this program, we're going to talk about alcoholism, and we're going to talk about a way to stay sober. And the name of this particular program is Good Reasons to Stay Sober. And with me today, I have the coordinator of Rational Recovery, is the name of this group. It's Newton Ellison and Ronald Ribble. You will all recognize Dr. Ribble because he's been here before, but he is also the advisor for the Rational Recovery Group. So welcome to Freethought Forum.
Thank you.
And let's talk about rational recovery. Who got the bright idea that AA didn't work for him?
Me?
Anybody?
I've known for a long time that AA didn't work for me. And as soon as I discovered there was such a thing as rational recovery, I sent off for the literature, and it turned out that I was the only person around who'd responded in San Antonio so far, and so I was designated to start a group. And I read the book and contacted Ron and asked if he'd be our advisor. I think you got me in touch with Ron.
As a matter of fact, I did.
Yeah.
I just love to get people in touch with each other that can help.
Well, it was great because he's been very helpful to us, and we now have, you can't have a rational recovery group unless you have a coordinator, which is me,
that's you,
and an advisor.
An advisor, and the advisor must be a psychologist.
Must be a mental health professional, must be a MSW, Master of Social Work, or Ph.D. psychologist, or psychiatrist, or in many cases MDs are advisors, but Ron is just right for us.
That's great, that's super. Well, it was very kind of you to do it, and does it take up much of your time, or?
Actually, the demands on my time are lighter than they are on Newt. The requirements for me is to be available, to be there periodically. Periodically is not specified. I mean exactly how often, but to lend professional support from a rational emotive standpoint to the group, and to provide them individual, extra, outside therapeutic opportunities if they desire that. And when you understand the rational emotive viewpoint, which really is the basis for rational recovery to begin with, and you understand why we provide that kind of support. And AA does not associate itself with professionals.
I didn't think it did, and I did hear, and just stop me if I'm wrong, but that they claim a great success rate, but there are no figures to prove this. They have never backed it up. Is that true?
As far as I know, the success rate is kind of overblown. It stands to reason that they're not going to have a 100% success rate. But I've found, just in my association with people who, let's say, have a drinking problem, that there are many, many of them who have gone to AA meetings, 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings, and who have just decided, not on the basis that they don't want to be religious, because we have people in our group who are declared Christians, who are Catholics, who are have declared themselves to be religious, but at the same time they just don't buy the addiction that you have to develop for AA. I think there is as good a case to be made for the existence of AAism as there is for people who have trouble with alcohol.
I have heard that. I have heard there are people who, once they have found AA, they go, then there are meetings going on all the time, as I understand it, all over different addresses, and they become addicted to the meetings, and they attend a number of them.
Right.
It becomes a career.
Well, AA, number one, one of their theses is that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And then, in fact, if one is going to control the problem, one needs help controlling the problem. One must One must submit themselves to some higher power, so to speak, who will help them control their problem. And we suggest that the control is really in the individual. All the control that one needs is in the individual. That in basically what rational recovery is all about is that we are what we think, and that it's for 80% of the people who are addicted, there is an underlying neurosis. Neurosis being a personality disorder or depression or anxiety disorder, something like that, that's founded in our own thoughts. And this whole idea comes from a fellow by the name of Albert Ellis, whom your husband is familiar with,
Yes.
and I am familiar, very interesting gentleman, who established rational emotive therapy back in 1955, if I'm correct. He actually was the earliest cognitive therapy. He calls himself a philosopher. He's an irascible individual, but he says, I'm really more of a philosopher than I'm a psychologist in many ways, because this whole idea of irrational thought underlying our problematic behavior comes from early philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, both of whom said we are what we think in differing ways. And later Dewey, Kant, and Spinoza, and other latter-day philosophers also said the same kind of thing. And so if that's the case, then since we are the ones who create our own thoughts, not that other things don't influence our behavior like biology or like family or mothers and fathers, but whatever, for instance, our mothers and fathers have done in front of us that we might have learned from them, we took as a part of ourselves. We incorporated them into our thinking process. They might have done it, we might have picked it up from them, but these goofy ideas, these nutty ideas, as Albert Ellis calls them, really come from. We form them, we keep them, and we shape them, and we can get rid of them. We have the control. We can do that by systematically attacking these irrational ideas.
Well, that's interesting, because when you say if you pick up something from your parents by observation as a child, that does not necessarily mean that you interpret it correctly, right? So,
That's right.
Therefore, why play this record over and over and live by it? Thing you decided on when you were 4 or 5, 6 years old, whatever. Yes, we do our own thinking, right?
Sure do.
Well, I want to know more about getting this started, because I tried to start a group here. Well, I did get it started, but it certainly wasn't easy, and it was a free thought group. But I know that organizing something of that nature is not the easiest thing in the world, so I wondered how you went about it.
Well, there's some good organizational support. The Rational Recovery headquarters is in Lotus, California, and they are happy to send you an organizing pamphlet, and that's called The Small Book by Jack Trimpe, and he is the director of Rational Recovery. And
Did he invent it? I mean,
well, you might say he invented it. He is a social worker in California, and I believe he read Ellis, and in the process of his work, he realized that there was and there is a need for an alternative to Alcoholics Anonymous, because while it does work for some people just go to one meeting and say, "Never again, I'd rather be a drunk." But Trimpe has encapsulated the work of Ellis, the rational emotive therapy that Ron described, which he abbreviates RET, and he has incorporated that into this book. And in the process have been developed all these chapters.
wow, that's impressive. How many is that?
There's one in Alabama. There's about 12 in Arizona. There's 50 in California,
Wow.
2 in Colorado, and every state is listed here. In Texas, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in Texas. 2 of them are in San Antonio. 1 is ours. There is another one in San Antonio, and let me give that man's name for in case you aren't from the, let's say, the northwest side and are more to the eastern part of town. Could I give this fellow's name?
Of course,
Okay.
do that.
His name,
sorry.
the advisor is Mr. Jim West, and I believe he's associated with St. Philip's College. And his telephone number in San Antonio is 531-3242. 531-3242. That's Mr. Jim West, and he is the advisor to the rational recovery. I believe he has his master's degree in education. And I don't know if they have a coordinator or not, but it's a lot of work for a professional to get involved in, and I really admire him if he's trying to do it all his own, but I imagine he has somebody doing the work for him.
Well, that's
Anyway, and look at all these names.
I'm impressed.
That's all right.
I had no idea. I thought it was kind of a fledgling group. I didn't realize it was so well established. It's only been recently since I started. I came to Freethought and Unitarianism late in life. I missed most of life before all the good things started to happen. And I subscribed to this, my membership actually in the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And this is an old Freethought Today. Well, it's not all that old. It's 11 months old. It was last April's issue. And this gentleman, Vince Fox, is talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. And he said in here, he lists all of the groups, including Alcoholics Anonymous. But he said his favorite one is Rational Recovery. That is his favorite. And then he gives the list of all the different ones. And there are more than I thought. There are some Men for Sobriety, Women for Sobriety. I never have heard of that. And MAMA, Methods of Moderation and Abstinence. I've never heard of that. But I think Rational Recovery has such a nice zingy name, don't you? I like it. Besides, rationality appeals to me. Well, what did you say? You have religious people that would prefer this too, and what was their objection then to AA? Is it
too rigid, too fundamentalist, too? You have to go into AA and work. The only way to work the program with AA is to follow the 12 steps. And one of the 12 steps is that you agree that you're helpless. Well, I personally could not agree that I am helpless because it is my hands that pops the top on a beer or opens the cap on a bottle of whiskey and pours it into a glass. It is my hands that pick up the glass and bring it to my lips and swallow it. And if a person can't control those things in the name of good health, whatever, in the name of not ruining your life, in the name of not getting cirrhosis of the liver, if a person can't control that on his own, well, it sort of diminishes their humanity. And when people go to AA meetings and are told that the only way you're going to be able to work this program is to give up any sense of self-worth, well, the people just turn around. Although there's some people who continue in AA without wanting to give up any self-worth, and they fake it. There are probably as many. Well, I don't know. I couldn't begin to give numbers to it, but there are a lot of people in AA and people who have admitted it to me that they go and work the program just because it's the right thing to do, and they don't pay any attention to all the religious mumbo jumbo.
I
think we want to summarize that briefly. Is that there's enough benefit for some people in attending AA meetings that they play the rest of the game for what benefit
they get out of it.
Yes, and
that's a shame.
Certainly we do not, as a rational recovery folks, ever suggest that if somebody goes to AA and they're benefiting from it, and it happens to be something that they agree with, and it agrees with them, that they should ever try anything else. Let them do it.
Sure.
But it's very difficult, I think, for people who are freethinkers, who do believe that ultimately they control their own destiny, to be in a system that is essentially masturbatory, which means that you must always go to meetings and you must always submit to this higher authority. You must do all this because you can't do it on your own.
It sounds so groveling to me somehow. And I think the first thing you should have is a sense of pride and self-esteem, and this is what's going to do away with the...
Well, of course, underlying many alcoholics, if you've known them at stage 4 and 5, when they get a chance to sober them up, is a very poor sense of self-esteem, and so that plays nicely together. The idea of AA and that go well together. About according to Ellison, at least about 80% of our addicted folks, alcoholically addicted folks, and he does use the term addiction, although I think he'd prefer something else sometime, first have some other kind of behavioral problem. So we wouldn't want to create the impression that simply by coming to AA and asserting one's own self-control and doing a little thinking that one's going to get over the problem of alcoholic addiction just like that. It's going to take some work, but mainly it's going to be your work, your effort.
Right. Well, how much of this do you think is genetic? They're talking now about if your father was an alcoholic, you stand a better chance of being an alcoholic. Is it simply because, is it in the genes, or is it because you see his behavior? I mean, he goes to the liquor cabinet every night when he comes home from work. Is it a combination of those things, or what do you think?
There's a lot of different theoretical viewpoints out there, and some. One of them is, for instance, that some people do acquire genetically a predisposition to be able to tolerate the effects of alcohol better, meaning I can ingest larger amounts of alcohol before I begin to show any wear and tear physically, before I start to stumble or slur or do things like that, and that leads to higher levels of alcohol in my blood while I'm still behaving rather normally, and that because of that we may actually begin to build a physical tolerance without knowing that we're doing it, that there doesn't necessarily have to be some kind of problem underlying the alcoholism. We may just get into it and not realize that we tolerate it as well as we do. That's one viewpoint that suggests some kind of a genetic factor in alcoholism. The argument goes on endlessly whether, in fact, because alcoholism does tend to run in families, whether it's genetic or it's monkey see, monkey do, whether it's modeling kinds of behavior. I don't think we have anything that you can put your finger on today and say with absolute certainty that this is it. We do know about 20% of the alcoholics, in fact, use alcohol not because they have any underlying problem, but simply because they're hedonists. And they want to feel good, and they want to feel good when they want to feel good, and so I'm going to drink, and if drinking makes me feel good, I'm going to do it.
Ooh, but it makes you feel so bad later. That's the
Well, but that's we start out by doing it to feel good, like with most drugs.
Oh, yeah.
And then by the time we realize that it isn't making us feel quite as great as we thought it was going to, at least not as great as it did the first time, we're already beginning to get hooked on it physically. We're becoming tolerant of it, and it's beginning to work its magic on our innards, and then we're in trouble.
That's interesting. I didn't really realize that, because it seems to me like once you don't feel so good, maybe you'd cool it a little bit. That doesn't...
No, because then you drink to make up for not feeling so good. And sooner or later, you're drinking simply, when you're at stage 4 or 5, you're simply drinking to be normal now. Your body has become so tolerant of high levels of alcohol. See, what happens is the barriers in your brain start to screen out and lower the amount of alcohol that will get into your brain, but you have ever increasing levels of alcohol in your bloodstream. And it is affecting the rest of your body. And your body, once you become a full-fledged alcoholic, you can tolerate levels of alcohol in your blood that would kill you or I if we went out and drank that much in one night.
Wow.
And we can walk around and look normal with that high level of alcohol. We've become so tolerant of it, see. So, it's a very dangerous drug. When I teach this in abnormal psychology classes, there's lots of people that just don't think about alcohol being the legal thing that it is, the most dangerous drug that we have.
Yes, and that was why we talked about this earlier on another program I did with Normal. The people from Washington came here and went to a wine sampling thing to select the wines for the people that were attending the summit. And I thought, I don't believe this. Big spot in the front of the Metro section of one of the papers.
And so much impurity in wine that it really makes you feel bad. Lots of that.
Well, I want to ask a question, because I went with a friend to an AA meeting one time, and I thought I would never get the smell of smoke out of my clothes and my hair and my pores. Everybody smoked and drank coffee like crazy. And so when you're talking about, you say there's an underlying something, I would say that they were already, they've given up the booze, but they're into the underlying thing, and what is causing this coffee mania, smoking mania thing that they go through is they have to have, it's like they have to have something in their hands and something going towards their mouths all the time.
That's where we come up with something that it's not, we call it the addictive personality, but we don't have a formal diagnosis called addictive personality, but we talk about it in psychology and psychiatry. And there do seem to be people who need something to be dependent on. For instance, there's one fellow that I work with who used to be a heroin addict who replaced his use of heroin, mainlining heroin, to eating.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, it's just going from one dependency to another. And in fact, AA, in a sense, helps you to do that kind of thing, because now you take the dependency away from alcohol and you put it in the organization. And smoking, and not that they preach smoking.
What are you going to say?
To be fair, there are AA groups that are non-smoking AA groups.
Oh, we have non-smoking ones now. Oh, goody. Well, I'll have to tell my friend, because he's a non-smoker, and I don't know what we were doing in that awful smoke-filled room. It was terrible.
Yeah, and I don't think it was. Not everybody who goes to AA obviously smokes anyway. But the point is that it does allow, I think, by its philosophy, this going from one dependency to another. And some might say, well, a dependency on a higher power is okay. Except that one always needs to do that. One always needs to depend on that higher power. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a God. You make your own higher power. Make it yourself.
Yes, well, that higher power, and I do think within yourself. So I want to hear something about this program, then the rational thing, and what do you have to offer besides getting away from the higher power thing? Let's get on.
Sure. I'd like to... if someone will mail me a stamped self-addressed envelope, I'll be happy to put one of these brochures in the mail to you. This is the Rational Counterpoint, and it says what RR is about, and it has an address on here to ask for further information. If you'll mail me a stamped self-addressed envelope to P.O. Box 120023, San Antonio 78212, or call the number that is on the screen.
Yes, we're running that, and at the end again, too, so they can have plenty of chance to get that and call and get more information. And could I just look at one of those? I want to see what you have here. This is the Rational Counterpoint, Rational Recovery Systems. That's... Yes, what you do now is this is sort of when you go, the idea is you stop immediately, right? Drinking, I mean, not going.
That's the idea. That's the idea.
You quit. You just quit. That's why I quit smoking. Just quit. That's easier. Diddle-daddle around, pampering yourself and saying, oh, I'll just have one now. I've hit a crisis or something. I didn't find that was made any sense at all. I just said, I don't want to smoke anymore. I've got high blood pressure. Maybe I can not go on medication by stopping the smoking. And so I stopped, and I picked of all times, would you believe, New Year's Eve. I picked New Year's Eve, and I'm smoke-free for years now. So, well, that's very good. And where do you meet, though? Do you have trouble finding places to convene?
We have been given the facilities on Monday evening at 7 o'clock at the Mission Vista Hospital. That is located near the corner of Jones Maltzberger and Thousand Oaks. And the address is 14747 Jones Maltzberger. And you can either get there by going out Jones Maltzberger or taking 281 to Thousand Oaks and crossing
Probably a better way, because I tried taking 281 to Thousand Oaks one time, and where did I wind up? In Blossom Stadium or something? I don't know where I was. But it's dangerous to follow a street. Right? You really, if the ones that have names, if it stays one name, it becomes 1,000 different streets.
Yeah.
But if every other block is a different name, I mean, it drives me wild, but enough of that. So they stop instantly. Now, do you have, I think AA, didn't they have where you could pick up the phone and you call somebody and say, hey, I'm having a really bad night. Can you kind of talk me through it or help me? Do you do that sort of thing with people? Or
We're
not?
doing that informally. We haven't progressed. We've only been meeting for, what, 5 5 months or so.
About that.
And we just got a permanent meeting place.
Yeah.
We were having to pay for it for a while, and so we
that's rough.
got a permanent meeting place now. And we really haven't developed to the point where we have that many members. We just haven't been contacted by that many members because AA has been working. And either AA or you just keep on drinking. But now there's an alternative to AA.
Something else besides drinking, and going to AA.
Well, we haven't done a great deal of real hardcore marketing yet either, and it's really elbow grease and expenditure of some calories to do that. But we just that's another thing that underlies our
What about
start.
public service announcements? Don't you think this is worthy of a spot on some television
through
and
public,
some radio?
public TV.
I would certainly
surely.
think. I know there's a great clamor for these spots, but at the same time, this is something I think that is vital to the community, and certainly would be, I would think, high priority over our church social, which we're having. I mean, you see those advertised everywhere anyway, on lamp posts and whatnot. So,
well, we meet, by the way, every Monday evening at 7 p.m. at the hospitals, in case anybody's interested out there.
yeah, 7 on Mondays. Ought to come and drop in on you sometime.
Sure.
And we have that terrible coffee too that everybody can drink. Well, and tea and other stuff.
They have decaf too.
Oh, good. I'm calmed down already. Yes. Well, where do you see it? Well, I hope to see a great future. Not that I'm looking for people to have problems so they can go get them solved, but I do think that possibly there are people out there who have not succeeded with AA and who aren't happy with that. I know lots of people who are exposed to this higher power thing in almost everything they do, from Toastmasters to I don't know what, anything. And people are praying no matter where you go. And some of us are extremely uncomfortable with that because, well, it's embarrassing. It's like watching somebody take off their clothes. If you take off your spiritual clothes, it's the same thing as taking off your clothes. And we just... I think that thing, when it turns you off, it turns you off. And it's hard to be told, well, you have to do that, or you tune out, but you pick up the good parts. It would be hard for me to do. So I hope that those who maybe are of a free thought bent, as I am, would seek you out, and that this could help them. Well, I don't suppose you want to say how many are in the group so far.
It varies. We've had meetings with 10 and 12 people in them, and we've had meetings with just 2 people.
With you and I and one other person or something like that. Well, I think the thing you should understand with rational recovery is, with AA, you must, you must have regular attendance. You should be there all the time. And with us, it's really up to you.
It's
as you need help. Interestingly enough, you notice that that's the small book and their book is the big book. I don't suppose there's any reason we called it the small book.
Is theirs called
But it
the
has
big
our own
book?
credo in it. By the way, we do have a credo, so to speak.
What sort of credo?
Well,
What
I
does
mean,
it say?
in terms of what rational recovery is all about and how you go about solving your problems and whatnot, and, what the therapeutic process is like. And sometimes, for instance, we view drinking as being a bad thing, and yes, definitely stop when you first come on board. But we do believe also that down the line, at least for some people, some people can learn to drink in moderation.
I was going to ask you about that, but we won't have time to go into that any deeper because the time is running out, and it always does just when things are really getting exciting. But I was interested in that because I know there is a theory that it can be done. Some people can do it and can manage it. And I know that I could not be a part-time smoker. I tried that once, many years ago, when I was toying with the idea of giving it up. It's moderating.
You're better off just quit.
Well, it is. Just quit and just call Rational Recovery. This is Catherine Fahringer saying goodbye from Freethought Forum. Hope to see you next week. Thank you both for coming.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny.